No, I'm not a writer.
Okay.
Welcome to the Keith B. Dixon Zone, dropping photography knowledge all day long. Right? Welcome back to another podcast broadcast. My name is Keith B. Dixon, and this is the Kilo Bravo Delta Zone official, you guys. Welcome back. If you're a continuous listener, I want to thank you for your continuous support. I appreciate it. I really do. And if you're thinking about subscribing or you have subscribed, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. If you want to contact me directly, just all you got to do is reach out to me on Twitter or Facebook. Either way, you can DM me if we're friends. If not, do a friend request. I appreciate you. Today, I'm going to be talking about 5 ways you can jumpstart your social media. And this is important because if you're listening to this, this podcast just released about 11 a.m. Central, I think it's going to be Central Standard Time, right after my presentation that I would have just done in Nashville at Imaging USA. Yes, so I'm. If you've heard this is going to be basically a spinoff, and a podcast that I feel is more about my feelings and opinions as it relates to social media, but heavily connected to everything I presented. So in presentations, I typically like to give you tools that you can apply. And it's not so much about what I think, it's about fact and application. On this podcast, I'm going to talk about my feelings about things. And that's a little different because when I go into the definition of social media, as opposed to exactly what it is, I'm going to talk about my feelings. So I got a lot of information to share with you today. And if you saw the talk, you're definitely going to see the difference. And I'm going to say that you'll probably see a lot more value in terms of just whole concept of what we're going to be talking about today. So let's go. Okay, let's dive right into this. If you weren't at the presentation, I'm going to follow pretty much the presentation format. As I mentioned, it's going to be just a little bit more opinion ejected into it, so bear with me. I know a lot of you who listen probably are familiar with my background, so I'm going to be reiterating some things that you may already be familiar with. Again, have patience with me. So let's talk about this thing called social media. And before I do, let me give you an idea about who I am, just in case you are super brand new to this. I'm a commercial photographer. I specialize in print-on-site photography. So literally printing 5x7s on location in high volume is what I do mostly to generate income. Now, I have several different brands. That's the biggest one, and architectural photography as well. So, and I've been doing both equally about the same. They're 2 completely different websites, 2 completely different brands. On the commercial side, I do a lot of large group photos. So, and fast. So 100 people, 150 people, doesn't matter. Lit, on location is another one of my specialties. And from that, I've been able to carve a niche into that part of the market. And it's something that I like to call high volume. It's high volume. It's big. It's high volume. And it's a market. It's very difficult to get into because you have to find people that need that type of service. So I want to say, I want to give it a comparison. I want to give it this comparison. If you sell Rolls Royces, you got to find people who can afford it. And that can be a little tough sometimes. So that's how I would compare it. In terms of social media is something that I saw as an opportunity, and I want to define exactly what social media means. So my definition of social media is just as it sounds. It's something social. It's a way to interact with people. And when I have to define it, there's, those hardcore academic definitions like networking and socializing and all of those things that we tend to believe about social media. And it's true. I tend to see social media as a way to not only get people's attention, but to develop relationships. I think that's really important when we think about the term social. Now, if you're on Facebook or LinkedIn or any of those channels where most people are, I'm going to say that those are more or less networking platforms. They're truly social platforms designed to make introductions, share information, and so on. The thing that I want you to know going forward, there's an ideal about social media being used as a way to sell, and that's completely wrong. And I think if you take that approach to selling, you're probably not going to be that successful. And I don't see where very many people are. I know Facebook talks about ads and running ads, and there are people out there, because there's always an outlier. So if we were to perform some statistical analysis, there's always going to be some outlier there that's performing well, selling in a space that's not really designed for. So I'm not going to say that this is absolute, but I will tell you that if your primary objective is to sell people on the internet, you're fighting a losing battle right now. And here's why I believe that. Most people wake up in the morning and decide what they're going to do. And one of those decisions I can guarantee you is not to pick up my phone, jump on the internet, and see who's selling a product. Now, I wish I could tell you that I made this ideal up by myself, and that comes from my own personal experience. It does in a way, but I was actually watching a YouTube video from I'm going to say an influencer. I'm going to call Carlos Gil an influencer. I know he calls himself a creator, but because we're all influencers. He's a major influencer. I was listening to Carlos Gil on YouTube, and he says he does this exercise in his keynotes, and again, exercise meaning he's going to exercise that question. And he says, how many people wake up in the morning literally and reach for their phone and go to a brand's website? I'll use Nike as an example. Go to the Nike website and look at what Nike is doing first thing out the gate. Rarely. I mean, it's crickets. Most people don't really do that. And that's really, when he said that, I thought that was picturesque of how social media works, because it is. People use social media as a way to escape situations, and here's the psychology behind it. And I've also heard this. People use social media to escape, to get away. Carlos Gil said this at work. Maybe I'm having a tough day. Let me go on Facebook and be entertained. Let me go on YouTube and be entertained. People are looking for feel goods, and that doesn't come in the form of an ad unless you're a shopper. Now, I'm going to contrast that, because remember I said people aren't, the internet's not really designed to be sold on. I'm going to contrast that. So you could say, Keith, that's being hypocritical. No, it's not being hypocritical. When I contrast it, it's going to be more or less, Keith, that was a great contrast, and I'm hoping that's the point I can make, because things are being sold on the internet, but we're going to talk about how and why they are. So these are the things that if you were at my presentation at Imaging USA, maybe I just didn't have time to really elaborate on, and this is where you're going to pick that up. So that's the point of this broadcast, and I hope I just gave you a good example of what's to come. Let's go into, I talked about the definition. Let's go into how to get started on social media. And that major point, that major introduction I just made coming into it, you'll see how everything I say after that really plays into it. So getting started, I want to give you a 3-step process that you should always remember. I'm going to call this the framework. The framework is important because if you follow the framework, you will never be confused about what it is you need to do. And it's really simply just 3 steps: format, type, and distribution. If you remember that, you will always be focused on how to structure your social media, and that's what's important. Now, let me give you the first one, the format. Format is, what are you going to put out? In what form? Is it going to be a blog post, a white paper, PowerPoint slides, email? Is it infographics? Is it academic? Are you doing video, audio? What are you doing? And why becomes the next question. And you probably heard me say in the presentation, what's your end game? Why are you doing this? Are you able to do it consistently? Are you able to do it regular? Is the production quality of standard? So what is the format? Is it graphically attractive? Because believe me, I see a lot of work out there. and it's just graphically, it's just terrible. Guess what? A person out there doesn't have a great product, but graphically they do. They're going to beat you out every single time. You're going to feel like the mouse in the room. They're going to be the big elephant in the room. So keep that in mind. So as you dive into this, think about how you're going to present your format. Now, contrary to what we might think, and here's the contrary thought. I'm going to post some stuff on the internet and send it out. And literally, when I say send it out, I'm going to post some stuff and send it out. I want you to think about this podcast as being at the gate, and we're getting ready to get on the airplane, and we walk to the gate, we taxi to the runway, we jet down the runway, we take off. That's where we're starting, because that's how it starts in most people's mind. I'm going to post something on the internet. I said stuff because now we're starting to escalate it. I'm going to post some content on the internet, and you know what? I'm going to design it, put it together, and I'm going to put it out there untested. I don't know what I'm targeting. I know this artist looks good and people said it looks good. I'm going to put it out there. The answer is no, don't do it. Don't. Because if you don't know the end game, you're not going to know the game. So as easy as people may make it, as easy as it seems, it's not. It's not. And that's the cost, literally. So we can argue that the internet is free, right? Oh yeah, that's free. You just sign up, set up your account. Our time isn't free. Our time is not free. Matter of fact, our time is more valuable than our dollars. Think about this. People, let me digress for a little bit. People that get into trouble, I want you to think about this. People that get into trouble, they have a lot of money, right? They may not take away their money, but they'll take away their time. And if you take away somebody's money, sometimes there's protections, oftentimes, but people may not care as much. But when you take away their time, that becomes a factor. We're going to lock you up and restrict you. Now that becomes an issue. So I want you to think about how valuable your time is. If you're listening to this podcast, I'm already thinking about how valuable your time is because of the way I've structured it, the information I'm going to deliver, the heart that I'm going to pour into it. I'm thinking about your time. If you're at the presentation, I'm thinking about if you're going to sit here and listen to me for 90 minutes, I'm going to give you some solid tools to walk away with so that you can go out there and implement what it is you need to do. And that's number one. Understanding. When I say number one, it's the number one priority. Understand what your end game is and why you are doing it. So here's an example. Let's say you're going to do a blog post. Why? Are you going to do a blog post because people said it was popular? No, you're going to do a blog post because, watch this, when people see your post in social media and you put that link in there that says click through to my blog to read more, you have now captured that person, because when they click through, and you're going to, hopefully you were at the presentation at Imaging and you saw where I had used Bitly to create, to track and measure click-throughs. People were clicking through. Now you've captured them. You know that content works because it drove them through that link onto your blog. And now you can use Google Analytics and see exactly what that person did, where they went, how they entered, how they exit, how long they stayed. You are in total control. And that's something that you can't see on most all social media platforms. They give you blanketed information because guess what? If I give you all the analytics of everything that I know about the people that are logging onto your platform, what am I going to sell you? I want you to think about this. I get really passionate about this. So in creating the format, the thing that you have to understand is whatever format that you create your content in, if you own it, you are going to be king and queen of your universe, guaranteed. If you don't own it, the only thing I can tell you is pray to God or something, the universe, the spirit, whatever it is you believe in, because if that company goes south of north, your information is going right along with it. Now they'll tell you can download it, but what good is it at that point, because they are gone. And I'm going to give you a great example. As you guys may know me from being a live streamer and being on Periscope and I've got 19 million hearts on Periscope right now, 345,000. I forgot what it's called, 345,000 plus coins or whatever it is that they call it. I can't take it with me. I can't take those hearts with me. If Periscope goes under, so do my hearts. Think about that. Where does the community go? Well, now, if they leave, the community has now lost momentum. We're done. We have to reconvene somewhere. What if somebody's on a 1-month hiatus? They're not going to know what's going on. They're not going to know where it's at. They're going to have to find and dig. And that's the problem with format and not owning that format. But if you have a website or blog or some platform that you have complete control over, guess what? That's not going to happen, because you'll always have it. Now, we're always going to have to pay somebody for access to something. So let's just get that in our mind. The question becomes, how much access and what are we willing to pay for it? That's really the price. So how do you get started on social? The thing that I'm going to tell you is practice first. Practice first on getting a complete website. If you can develop a complete website, and there's all different kinds. Let's say you're not a photographer and website is, well, I don't have anything to put on a website. There are personal pages that you can develop. There are personal pages that you can develop of your own. Develop your own profile. Matter of fact, because I want to eliminate all the excuses, Adobe, if all you have to do is subscribe to Adobe, get you a hosting services are probably never going to go out of business. And if they do, you just download your pages and upload them to something else. Domain names, look, that's here to stay. Get you a personal page, develop it, put all your information on there, and put that out to the world and start building on that. It's really just that simple. People don't think along these lines enough. We want to be a part of what's popping. And look, let me share this with you. If someone is successful at something, they've probably found out where their niche is. Is there room for other people? Absolutely. But the question becomes, do you have the staying power? Do you have the experience, the knowledge, the forethought to do exactly what they did, or to do what they did, or to carve or walk that path? That question remains to be seen. Anybody that's an outlier, anybody that's in the 1% is there for a reason. So you have to understand that about popularity. A model who's cute, an actor who's famous, a musician, of course they're going to attract a lot of attention. I mean, it's just normal. So when you see these people on social media and they have thousands of followers, or you see a photographer who shoots great images and they've got a lot of followers, the thing that I'm going to tell you is they're probably connected in some way physically to an audience. And that's what I've seen over the years. You take, for instance, an actor, you see him on TV, and that actor is popular on that TV show. There's a good possibility people are going to follow him right away. I can't tell you how many times I've actually seen a great speaker on YouTube, and I'm going to follow that person on their social media channel because I like what they said. I want to keep up to date with what they're talking about and what they're doing. That's the way social media works. I don't want to be sold. I just want to be informed. I want to be educated. I want to be brought up to speed. And that's how people use social media. So you got to be real careful, because what happens is typically we think of something that we want to broadcast to the world, and we just put it out there amongst all the other noise that's already there. And when it's noisy, no one hears anything. That's the reality of what we see today on social media. So if you don't have an audience or a sphere of influence, and you probably heard me talk about this in the presentation, in my talk, if you don't have a sphere of influence already, you probably don't have anything. It's going to be hard. So you've got to go out and develop that to get past challenge number 1, which is what we call channel noise. Each platform is a channel, and each channel has audio, visual, right? That's noise if there's a lot of it, and you have to try to figure out how to stand out amongst that noise, or not. Some people are really good at it, some people aren't. The thing that I'm going to tell you is typically most people will create something that an audience will grab onto and it'll multiply. Those are really those outliers, and you see that's changing right now. I mean, all the big stars of yesteryear are no longer the stars of today's years. Things change. The internet changes. Platforms change. It evolves. It's got to evolve. So what I was doing 2 years ago, I'm not doing now. I'm doing a completely different strategy. You guys know that I live stream, but lately I haven't, because you know what? It's time to do something different, because guess what? Things are changing. You can't do the same things all the time and expect a different result. I started podcasting. I love podcasting not because I love doing it. I do love doing it. I love podcasting because it gives people the freedom to listen to the content anytime they want, anywhere that they want. They can download it on their phone. It doesn't cost like live streaming does. Live streaming costs people their time. You got to sit there and listen to it. Think about that, because remember my example earlier on about time? Imagine that. I have a hard time, I'll be honest with you. I have a hard time watching YouTube videos, especially instructional videos. I have a platform, you guys, called the 90PT, and I can see how long people are willing and able to sit there. It's difficult because we have so much going on in our lives. Kids, bills, money, significant others, family. How do you sit there for 90 minutes when you're constantly going? It's tough. And I want you to know that that's the challenge of social media. So you have to be really clear about who you are and what you are representing to the world if you want to be truly successful and develop an audience. Community is one of the most important things that you're going to do. So in step 2 of this is remember the framework I was telling you about? Step 1, format, figuring it out. Step 2 is, what type of information are you going to put out there to the world, you guys? What are you going to put out there to the world? And why does it even matter? Again, back to the end game. Everything always goes back or ties back to the end game. Why does it matter? And there's 3 types. I want to give you these 3 types. Value add, vision, and shared experience. Those are the 3. So let's talk about the value add. And value is a word that's just been pounced on. Literally. I talked about it all last year and the year before. Value. Matter of fact, I use this term called free full of value, right? Free full of value, pound, free full of value, and beat that into the ground. But what does value really mean? It's subjective. I'll tell you that for the most part. I think it's probably the best definition possible, because if it's important to you, you're going to do it. And that's the definition, my definition of what value is. If it's important to you, you're going to do it. You're going to value that. You value your kids, you value your home, you value your car. Some people value the shoes that they wear. It's all subjective at the end of the day. So there's no way to really pinpoint, what everyone will like. You just have to pinpoint what most people like. So in developing your content, what do most people like about what you do? Second, do you have a vision? Can you predict about where things are going to go? Can you predict where the internet's going to go? Can you predict where social media is going to go? No, nobody really can. This is like the wild, wild west. You know what I mean? In a lot of senses. They're talking about net neutrality and all of this other stuff, but nobody can really predict what's going to happen. It's just, we have to wait until we arrive. And this is what I found with the internet. When it gets here, we'll deal with it. That's literally what it is. When it happens, we'll acknowledge it or not. That's the way the internet works. So are you providing a vision? Do you have an insight to something very specific in your industry that people don't? For instance, I'm a celebrity and I'm very popular. And all you see is my end product. How about if I give you a vision, a sight into what I do in my day-to-day? How about that? In my day-to-day, this is what I do. And this is homogenous sort of with shared experience, and that's the third point, shared experience. But can you predict or give us some vision into kind of how you do your processes? The shared experience, this is what I've gone through. Back in 2012, when my social media really took off, I was doing a project called 2212. essentially, I'm jumping on and off airplanes, in the middle of doing jobs and showing people this is what it is. This is how challenging, this is how I created the images, and people became interested in that. That's a shared experience. I do print on sites and large group photos. Here's the setup right here. Photographing the U.S. Circuit Court judges of all 50 states. Here's the background photos. We call those behind the scenes, BTS, right? Behind the scenes. What's your behind the scenes? What's your vision? What's your insight? And that there, folks, starts to develop your content. It's really just as simple. If you forgot everything that I said today, and maybe your dog, let's do the classic, my dog ate my notes, right? Remember that from school? The dog ate the notes. Let's say the dog ate the notes. I'm going to give you 3 things that you can remember right now. Format, type, and distribution. That's all you got to remember. What format are you putting your content out in? What type of content do you want to put out as it relates to the 3 that I just mentioned? And then we're going to go into distribution. It's really just that simple. So look, once you figure out who you are and who you want to reach, now that's a tough question. Who do you want to reach? You want to reach photographers? You want to reach creatives? Do you want to reach investors? Do you want to reach companies? Who do you want to reach? Because now you got to figure out how to reach them. And let me sidebar for a second, because remember I told you this was going to be about opinion, social media opinion. This is my opinion, right? At the end of the day, it all goes back to hand-to-hand combat, boots on the ground. At the end of the day, you want to reach a company? Yeah, you can email them all day long. They can see your social media. They don't know that it's you, really. It's like a blind date. It's like meeting somebody online, right? Hey, it looks good, smells good, right? Well, we don't even know if it smells good. I'm giving away extra credit, right? Looks good. Now, you know what? Let's see if it is. Now, does it sound good, right? Because I'm sitting in front of you. And that's what it ultimately boils down to. Does it line up? Your social media is like an online resume, period, right? It documents your frequency. It doesn't wait for anybody, because it's funny, because if you updated your resume one time and then 10 years pass, it's going to look like that one-time update, in the future, literally. So guess what? The internet doesn't wait for anybody. So if you don't do anything, nothing will happen. Think about this. Real powerful stuff, right? It doesn't wait for anybody. So you've got to figure out who you are and your end game. I'm going to say that a lot during this. What's the end game? Who are you? Who do you want to reach? How are you going to reach them? And guess what? You've got to get your boot and your handshake on the ground and meet those people. Because guess what? If you don't, it's just going to be like a blind date. And I'm sorry to say, folks, I'm sorry to say this. Let me apologize right now. People are going to judge you for how you look, how you speak, how you sound. People are going to judge you. That's okay. You have to know that. And once you do, just accept it. I'm a big guy, right? I'm a big guy. I know people are going to probably look at me and say, hey, there's a big black guy right there. I could take that a million ways, right? Matter of fact, let's throw in a couple stereotypes. He probably played football, or maybe he's an athlete. That's what people assume all the time. And you know what? You just play right into it or away from it. However you want to deal with it, that's going to be up to you. But most people don't act outside of social media because they are fearful of what people might think of their total presence. And you have to get over that. If you're dorky, then play into the dorky role with some personality. If you're big, play into the big role. You don't have to amplify that. People are already going to see that you're big. You don't have to advertise it to people. But you know what? Don't let it defeat you. Don't let the fact that you are big, or you got purple hair, or you like to wear boots, don't let that detract from your character. If that's who you are, be who you are. But if that is the case, just know that whatever you project on the social media, you have to be able to project in your physical presence. Those two go hand in hand. And are there people out there who have never made physical contact or put boots on the ground and handshakes? Do those people exist? I'm sure there's outliers. Remember, I said I can contrast. Anything that I say on here is not an absolute. There's no absolute. The only absolute is I know I'm gonna be hopefully talking in the next 30 seconds. That's how sensitive it is. So there are no real absolutes. There are outliers out there. There are people out there who can defy those. Absolutely. But a majority of people can't. So understand who you are, who you want to reach. Now, early on, you heard me say original content, your website, your blog. The one thing I didn't mention is texting people. Now, you're not gonna look. Let me put a disclaimer on this. You're not gonna text people ads, right? But you can send people text messages like, "Hey, this is Keith. I hadn't heard from you in a while. I wanted to touch bases with you. I hope everything is going well. I'll talk to you later." That is a form of networking. That's the power of your phone. I tell people to text me all the time. Hey, I understand if you don't respond back, it's okay. You can respond back with an emoji. I do it all the time. People, I don't have time to sit down and really type out a message. I'll send you an emoji to let you know that I saw you can see the read tag on the text, but just send them an emoji. Take the second out and do it. But texting is a form of networking. I text my clients all the time. So I want you to think about this. Your website, your blog. Now, just recently, I had an epiphany, a revelation, a rejuvenation. I don't know. I started posting these podcasts on my blog because I started thinking about, I got to drink my own Kool-Aid. You know what? Let me take this all the way back to the mothership. I'm going to see how that plays out. Because you know what? When you log on to hear this podcast, you're on a podcast platform that I'm paying for every month. But am I really able to control the statistics like I really can? If I get them to come over to my blog, I'm gonna have more control. Let's see how that plays out. You get what I'm saying? Maybe I tie my blog into iTunes. I'm sharing, my thought process with you guys so that you can understand that this is something that people really don't have a lot of control over. Just the platforms do. They have control over how your information is being seen. You don't, unless you have these platforms like a blog or a website or some page that you can totally manipulate yourself. You don't know. That's the interesting thing about this. Information is still being controlled, and if you don't use them, you don't. The thing that they do is they say, "Hey, look, there's you won't be discovered. You won't be seen." Think about this. Let's argue this point for a second. If you want to go viral, the first thing you'll probably hear is, "Oh, you need to create a good YouTube video. You need to be on Facebook. You need to be on Vimeo. You need to be here. You need to be there." But why do I have to be on that platform to go viral? Why can't it be, if you want to go viral, create a great web page and shoot it out to and post it on the internet somewhere? No, it's not possible. It's not possible. And that's the thing that scares me about the way we see information and the way that it's being disseminated to the masses. It's got to go through a filter step, and that step is totally dependent on your sphere of influence right now as it stands. Will it change? Yeah, I think it'll change out of our control even more so, because companies are looking for ways to charge us for everything. Analytics, they're looking for ways to reduce down our organic reach so that they can charge for it. That's been going on for years. That's the number one question. How do we do this? Now I want to shift gears and say, remember earlier I said, the internet's really not designed to be sold on. Remember that? I'm going to shift gears for a second. I'm going to tell you that just last year, I was working a conference for the retail industries, marketers, and all the companies that have marketing departments, online and traditional. We're probably at this conference. I mean, everybody was there. Every retailer I could think of was there. It was amazing to see all of these companies there, and I was blessed. Matter of fact, I wanted this job just so I could see what they were going to say. And I literally told them, hey, I'm real big on online social. I'd love to do this. I didn't reduce the price to get the job, but I made sure I got hired and gave some extra services because I really needed to see this. And one of the things that they talked about that was that sort of confirms that people really don't like to shop online, but they tolerate it, was the empty shopping cart phenomenon. People go online, they go to a website, they fill up a shopping cart with stuff, and then they abandon it. So, the abandoned shopping cart. No one really knows why it happens, but, it all boils down to consumer psychology and people wanting to touch a product and feel a product. So that's like the last frontier right there. And then it's funny because retailers will report our online sales have grew 500%. You hear that on the news. Yeah, okay, so 100 more people shopped online. Come on, right? That equates to 500%. We have to be subjective to that kind of stuff. We really do. It's so funny. The video, we posted this viral video and it got 5,000 views in one day. Well, how many people actually watched that video through its entirety? How many people actually watch the ads? Not a lot of people, believe it or not. It was like 3 seconds people make a decision to click off a video. Most people don't even want to see the ads. They just click right. Matter. Let me deep dive on this even further. I have YouTube Red. They don't even show ads. Come on, you guys. They don't show you the ads. They show you the ads in the non-paid segment, like you just sign up for your YouTube account. They show you ads, and you have to watch the ads for like 3 seconds because they probably got it timed out psychologically to the point where you would click off the video. So right when you get ready, like I don't want to see this, then you can skip this ad pops up, and then they know exactly how long you're willing to watch ads. Think about this. They know exactly how long you're willing, and not just you, they're clumping you together with a demographic. All these analytics and all these analytics people out there, they're clumping you together by region, by okay, this person is in San Francisco in the Potrero area, and most of the people here will click off within 3 seconds, so we know we can only place a 3-second ad here. Well, think about this. People here in this particular the Potrero Hill and the 300 block, I don't know if they have it narrowed down. Like I'm doing this for dramatics. In the 300 block of Haight, they all watch toothpaste videos. So you know what? Anybody that's selling toothpaste, we're gonna plug them into this demographic, and next thing you know, we're rolling. That's how deep it is. And in order for them to get top dollar, they've got to prove it. So guess what? Why would I give it away when I could sell it by just doing a little bit of homework? And that's the way the internet is evolving going forward. Remember I told you, if you don't take away anything, take away these 3 characteristics: value add, vision, and shared experience. This is my vision of where the internet is going. And I'm saying all of this to say that if you don't develop your sphere of influence, if you don't get the boots on the ground and start connecting with people, literally, and finding out where they are through, whether you go to a conference, BNI meetings, or trade shows, whatever it is you do, if you don't get out there and start shaking hands of the people that you want to get in business with, you're never going to shake hands with them, because all business is done through personal relationship. And then you can get people to follow you, because you'll see them, they'll friend you. Matter of fact, when you go to a conference and you meet somebody and you have a good experience with them, you'll see that they'll follow you right away. But do a friend request to somebody that you don't know that you knew was at the conference, and see if they friend you back. They probably won't. Oh, I don't know that person, I'm not friending them. So if you're thinking about all your likes and follows and all of that, let's talk about that for a quick second. Let's talk about likes and follows and all of that kind of stuff. So check this out. You got a web page, and the traffic is tremendous. You can measure that. You can say, you know what? I do baby portraits, and I just looked in my Google Analytics, which is pretty intense, and you can take classes on how to use it, and it just drills down everything literally. I mean, they're giving it to you on Google, right? If you're willing to put in the time and effort, you can find out, where people came in and where they left and what time they left. I mean, it's insane, right? But let's say people are clicking on baby photos, and then you start realizing that you're getting calls for baby photos. We can correlate that. But let's say, and you say, well, how'd you hear about me? I was on your website, right? I want you to think about this. Oh, I saw your Instagram post. Well, they could say that, but then most of the time they're going to go from your Instagram post to your website. Think about this, right? Because they want to see more. And that should be the ideal about how you post. Taking them back to your website. You can find this on my website in the gallery here. I don't know what the language is, but you got to get them back to your website, because that's where the selling actually starts, because they are interested in more. You just don't know how much more they're interested in. So you have to be able to see that. But when someone likes your photos, you just get on there, and and again, because it goes back to my point about the internet being something that makes people feel good. When you post a photo and you see thousands of likes on there, it makes you feel good. And then you stop, because you're just like, oh, I just got my fix for today. I posted that and everybody liked it. But I'm still broke. I still got, $100 in my checking account. I don't know how I'm going to pay the rent, but I got 1,000 likes on that photo. I'm real happy about that. Look, I'll be the first one to tell you, I've never gone for the whole like thing and the whole this and that. If anything, I saw that as a way to get people on the hook and then hook them. That was it. And that doesn't last long, because people are smart. They eventually see through that. So that was a strategy from 6 years ago. Let's do the bigness and get their attention. And then it becomes like, how do you continually create the bigness? You can't. It's not possible. So then I switched up my strategy and I said, you know what? I'm going to start to build community. And when you start building a community of people, that's where the rubber meets the road. Remember I was telling you about value? Community is tied to the type. If your type is wrong, the community will be wrong. Community is tied to the type. You guys know I co-created it was called Exposure, CAS. I co-created that. That was all done through social media. That was my social media experiment. It was actually a 2-year experiment, you guys. 2-year experiment to see if I could pull, and this was my responsibility to the conference. There were other people involved and they had their responsibilities. My responsibility was to promote that conference. And I promoted it through social media, through community. And it worked. I went into a city where I knew no one but a few people. It wasn't like we had these, day-to-day contacts. I just knew a few people there and created this conference. Could I do it in any city? I'm going to probably tell you I could, because when we formed this in Detroit, the phone calls I got was, I don't know if I want to go to Detroit, Keith. Why are you doing it in Detroit? They're having bad times. I just got a lot of negative information about Detroit. And I was like, well, I think this is the perfect place. And it was. It was the perfect place. So I want you to understand that it's not about popularity. It's about connection. It's about connecting with people. And when you understand that about social media, you're going to understand how it works. I'm going to create some value add. I'm going to provide some vision. I'm going to share my experience to a community of photographers, and we're going to do it in Detroit. I'm going to show you what my commitment is. I would do 3 or 4 broadcasts a day on Periscope. Matter of fact, I ended up doing over 2,000 broadcasts. 2,000 people. I remember one time I was working with Ro Habibi. Ro Habibi is he was on $1 Million Listing San Francisco, and he said to me, Keith, I don't see the return on doing that. He said that to me. We're on a shoot. He was like, I don't see the return on doing that. Like, how do you get a return on that? And I said, the return is the conference, because, we were funding, we got sponsors and people to come in, and Schoolcraft College and Miller's and all these organizations came in and they put the money up. We had to put up our own money as well. Don't get it twisted, right? We had to put up money too, and that became the reality. So community does work. Community is the internet. It really is. Now, if you think about all the things that I've said up until this point, these are my ideals and my opinion as they relate to the presentation that I'm doing, or the presentation that I did at Imaging USA, except for it's more of me and my thought process. You may, hopefully, you may not agree with a lot of the points that I'm making, because these points sometimes they're based on what could happen, and that's, when we think about what could happen, we kind of default to what we know right now, and that may not line up with what I'm saying. Doesn't make it right, doesn't make it wrong. It's just I don't quite see it yet, and that's how I want you to approach this kind of going forward. Not yet, but it's coming, trust me. So that's how I got people's attention, you guys. Literally, that's how I got people's attention with the word free and value. Look, my goal was never to get rich off of the conference. My goal was to get people's attention. And I will definitely tell you, if it would have created wealth, I would have taken it in a heartbeat. But the number one goal was to get people's attention in the photography industry, because people just didn't value, especially us. And you guys know I'm a black man. We just didn't value education that way. And that was the leading edge for even doing this. I wanted people to value photography education, because without it, and if you don't believe in it, and you don't think you should be doing it, the photographer that you think you want to become, it won't happen. I'll argue that to the ground. If you are not a technically proficient photographer, if you are not a photographer who's going to study the craft and embrace the history of photography, you're not going to be as successful as you could be. I can argue that. We can argue that for days, because there's just going to be things that you just don't know, things that you just don't understand. Something's going wrong in your lighting, you're not going to understand why. And that's why I pushed education the way I did and made it for free, because I wanted to get people's attention about what it is. Also wanted to get the industry's attention about, selling on the platform, and, always making everything about sales and all that kind of stuff that we had became so used to seeing, as opposed to just educating us. Hey, we already paid money to come to this conference, teach us something. Jeez. That was my thought. Along with a lot of the people that I was working with. So that's what it ultimately boils down to. And as we conclude out, we're going to go about 10 more minutes on this recording. As we conclude, I want to take you into something called content distribution. And this is not something that I've made up. This is the part of the framework. Content distribution is very critical, because it leads to ownership. And any platform that you're on, although you may have rights to your content and it's, there's this copyright and all this kind of stuff, you don't really own it. You don't really own it. You don't own the platform that it's on. And then once you put it on to Facebook and all of these, how many of you guys have actually read through the policies in terms of conditions about a lot of, how many of you guys actually read through those? Because you're giving up licensing to them basically for using the platform. They can do whatever they want. Do they do it? Not yet, but they can. Will you be able to say anything about it? No, because you agreed to it. I'm just saying, right? So So we have to figure out how we own our distribution on our content, no matter what happens, no matter how the industry changes, because when it does, remember AOL? Remember AOL? People swore by AOL. Remember the other platform, MySpace? Imagine if you had a MySpace page and it was just dope, right? You had all your community on there, your followers. MySpace doesn't exist anymore. So don't think for a second things can't change. Don't think for a second that things can't change. And when it does, do you own the platform? All the work that you put in, does it go down the drain? I hear, one of the things that I hear right now, because YouTube is really big. People are talking about getting checks on YouTube and this and that on YouTube and all these YouTube people. And then YouTube started changing the way videos were aggregated, and people started complaining because they felt like they weren't getting views. I even heard this on Facebook. Same thing. I'm not getting the views on my videos. I'm not getting in Periscope, definitely. We've heard that all over and over again, because these companies have the right to control how that content is being managed. And if let's say you have a great community, but your market is narrow, right? They might see that narrow market, like 19 million, 2,000 followers. Well, there are people out there with 19 million and 8,000 followers. Well, that's more valuable because they got 8,000. We'll take 8,000 over to 2,000. But you know what? I have a community behind mine. A lot of people will have 8,000 followers and they couldn't get 2 people to show up to a free coffee event. That's the difference. That's the reality. So whatever you do, think about how you can create ownership in your platform. So if it goes away, right? And good example of that, I'm going to give you a great example of that. Back in the day, I started the concept of exposure and CAS. The concept came from a local meetup that I was doing called Photographers Working Together. And I started that meetup with another photographer. Her name is Sheila Morgan. And we had 8 years running. It was literally 8 weeks free, and we did it for 8 years. Isn't that funny? 8 weeks free photography. We would take super beginner students and take them all the way through this 8-week classroom situation, do a gallery showing at the end, and then have them present their work in that gallery format. That was the course. It was great. It really was. It was a great run. And then all the people, our form of communication was on meetup.com. Now, one of the things that I did, and I'm going to tell you, I have no qualms about readjusting and changing things, because that's the environment that we live in on the internet. You have to readjust. You have to refocus. I shut the meetup. I didn't shut it down. I stopped it because it's still going now in a different form. So I stopped it. I stopped the meetup, and I said, you know what? And here's what stopped it. I changed the platform to subscription based, and all the people fell out. Literally, true story. And then eventually, they reset the platform. All that work that it went in to build that was gone. And you know what? There was nothing I could do to get it back. Well, there was something I could do, because a lot of the people in there, I had personal contacts with them. So it was just a matter of notifying them and saying, hey, this is where the new platform is. But what I wanted to do was just get out the people who weren't responding. And even in the Bomb Squad community to this day, Bomb Squad community is the community that was established, and a lot of the attendees from the Bomb Squad community actually went into they became the audience for CAS and exposure. That was the audience. So when you think about community, think about it along those lines and what it meant. If you had the chance to experience CAS or exposure, if you had that experience, you're gonna know exactly what I was talking about. So it was a phenomenal thing, and it made a lot of impact on the industry both years in a row. And I gotta tell you, I love that part of it. I love that the most, is that the impact that we had, because it helped me to prove that social media and community is one of the most viable aspects of social media. So let me recap here, because we got about 6 minutes left on this broadcast, and I want to recap 3 points: format, type, and distribution channels. Either you're going to ride on it or you're going to own it. Those are the two things. You own it. If it's your website, you actually own that. You can set the policy for it. Somebody's going to provide you, and you don't even have to. Matter of fact, you can create your own website on your own home server. If you want to take it that far, you can be your own platform, and you got to get the domain from somebody else. We always gonna have to get it from somebody else. It's how far do you want to go with it? Or you can ride it. Facebook, Instagram, Periscope, Twitter, all of those platforms, whatever it is you need to do. That's the framework. If you work from that ideal, you'll always be conscious about the type of marketing content that you're going to create. Now, I talked today a lot about workflow, lifestyle, how social media affects our life, creating a social media mix in terms of just getting people's attention and being on the ground. Your platform that you choose will ultimately depend on who you're trying to reach. So I wasn't platform specific, like, okay, go to Facebook for this and Instagram for that. No, it's who do you want to reach? Those are the questions you should be asking yourself. Tracking systems, I talked about Google Analytics, defining your demographic. Knowing the end game is going to help you to always define those demographics. And promoting and engaging. Get out. If you have a brick and mortars, you should definitely be out with your boot on the ground, shaking hands. If you're working out of your house, or if you're working out of, a sublet studio, it doesn't matter. You still need to be networking all day and every day. All right, I hope you guys have gained some value in this podcast. You've extracted out some value, and I want to thank you. If you attended Imaging USA and Nashville, I want to thank you for sitting through my presentation, and let me know about your successes. Let me know about your struggles. I'll take it either way, but just let me know. Let's connect at Keith B. Dixon on Twitter. You can definitely DM me there, and I'm on Facebook, you guys. Thank you for listening. I appreciate you, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast every Friday, 7:30 Pacific Standard Time. There's a new podcast coming out every Friday, so 4 a month and sometimes more, depending on, what's pressing at hand. Thank you for listening. My name is Keith B. Dixon. I have been your host, and I hope you guys have enjoyed this content. Peace.